I'm Glenn Wood, and I'd like to tell you about this piece of furniture on which I'm casually sprawled. It's called a Vargueño. It comes from Spain, from the 16th century, from Salamanca. But before I do that, I'd like, with your indulgence, to say a little bit about myself. I was born in 1945 in England at the end of the World War II. Very difficult times. My father had returned from Malaya and India, where he was fighting the Japanese, and my uncle, who was very influential, had returned. Major Morrison, he fought with the King's African Rifles in Egypt and Palestine, and before that with Marshal Tito in the mountains of Yugoslavia with the partisans. But Hitler's bombs had devastated the country. Those were difficult times. Of course, I don't remember the earliest days, but from the age of 3 or 4 onwards, I do remember my parents struggling. We were poor. Everybody was poor. Food was rationed and in short supply. And my parents had a small house to furnish and couldn't afford new furniture, so we had to have old. And at that time, the older the furniture, the cheaper it was. So we went for 15th century, 16th century furniture, which nobody was interested in at all. I mean, eggs were more interesting than antique cabinets. So my mother was able to find an oak Tudor cupboard that a farmer was using to keep his chickens in, but she rescued it for a very modest sum, and that became our kitchen cabinet. And with time, as we improved, the family fortunes revived, we were able to buy newer and newer furniture until we got up to Georgian mahogany, and it was very nice. But by this time, we didn't really have much appetite for new furniture anyway. I went off to university. I studied first in the University of St Andrews, which is Scotland, was my cultural home. My mother's family came from Scotland, and later to Oxford University. And after that, I lived in South America, visited over 50 countries around the world, spoke many languages. But I never lost my interest in antiques and old things, particularly those made of wood. There's an affinity between the Wood family, and me in particular, and things that are made of wood. And this piece is a wonderful example. It's so old, it dates to about 1590. Cervantes could have written Don Quixote on this very desk. He didn't, and the reason I know that is because the desk told me. But its story is here in this recently published sequel to Messengers in Time. And I'd just like to read you the opening paragraph as it relates to this cabinet. Who am I? Let's play a little guessing game before we get into our main story. I think it's fair to say that my family is a noble one. According to records, our family hails from Persia in the Middle East. We'd been there for generations until a powerful ruler from Macedonia, called Alexander the Great, discovered us and decided to take examples back to his homeland. He felt we had great potential and would be appreciated there. This was in the 4th century BC. He was quite right. We were transplanted to Greece and thrived. So the star, the hero of this story, is in fact the walnut tree, and the fruit. But this piece of furniture is made from walnut. So this gives us a little background. We call it historical fiction, but it's mostly true. You can read about it in Echoes from the Past, and if you find this subject matter of interest, you can follow my YouTube channel. And my Facebook page, Glenn P. Wood.